Is AI-assisted coding the new normal, or is it just another passing phase in tech hype? And what exactly is Vibeware? It's a rising term that's starting to make its way into conversations about the future of software development. And in today's episode, I'm joined by Ryan Frankel, President and CTO of Hosting Advice. And we're going to break down what vibe coding actually means, what it doesn't mean, and he's also going to bring years of experience in hardware, software and web infrastructure so we can have a grounded take on how AI is reshaping the developer role, but not replacing it. So we'll unpack how Vibeware lowers the barrier to entry for building software while also introducing new complexities in debugging, integration and architectural decisions. But Ryan will argue that even as tools get smarter, foundational knowledge of software development does still remain the critical piece that separates a working app from a production-ready platform. And we'll also explore how AI is transforming the age-old question of build in-house versus buy off the shelf. So with custom tools becoming easier to build in-house, could we be heading toward a shift away from generic SaaS solutions? And what does all that mean for startups, enterprises, and the next generation of developers growing up with AI baked into every coding experience? So from Vibeware to vocational shifts, from AI co-pilots to infrastructure realities, this is a conversation about where we're heading and what developers need to carry with them for this ride. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US so we can speak with my guest today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. I'm president and CTO of a company called Digital Brands. We own 5 websites that do news and advice and product comparisons. One of them is hostingadvice.com. My background is in hardware and software, mostly integrated circuits and web development. Started my early days working with the military on digital signal processing, and then moved into web development as kind of my life went on and my interests changed. So yeah, that's kind of my background.
Wow. I'm curious now. I've got to dig a little bit deeper on that. Military and technology. Was there some kind of crossover? Or was there always a passion for technology? Did something light the spark in you back early in your career?
Yeah. So, when I was a kid, I had an Apple IIc. Oh. And I don't know if people remember those, but it was a little tiny green screen and you booted it up and you got a flashing cursor. And I was a little kid and little kids are just so creative. And I was like, okay, how does this work at all? And it turns out it worked in this language called BASIC. And, I started kind of learning about BASIC and so my software journey started. Then as I got older and more into computers and electronics and stuff, I got really into, how does the hardware actually work? Okay, the software is really cool, but what's actually physically happening here? And so I ended up going to school for electrical engineering, got really into integrated circuits and through music, the idea of signal processing, how does an EQ work? How does delay work? How does a Fourier transform work? And so that ended up getting me into kind of the military hardware arena where I ran into just some incredibly brilliant people and really learned, the craft of engineering. And then, the problem with hardware engineering is the turnaround times, especially with integrated circuits, can be very long, right? So you're working on a project and, when these things have to be manufactured, you get kind of one shot at it. The scale of it is huge. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. Obviously, the stakes are high and there's tools to help you do that. But you're talking years in terms of projects. Then, I started dabbling in software a little bit again. And it was so exciting to be able to do things quickly, right? To have this idea, work on it all night, have a version of it, and then iterate that version and have in days or months, you could have a full product. And so I got really turned on by that idea of doing things quicker. I still have a huge love for hardware, but software like that original, blinking cursor really got me again. And so just kind of the way of the winds. I don't know if it was a conscious decision, but just kind of the steps I took in the progression of my career from, these highly advanced integrated circuits to just my love of software and algorithms and really came through like the web development sphere.
Wow, what a great story. And listening to it there, I was getting flashbacks of my own of walking in stores, sneakily typing in 10 print, Neil is cool, 20, go to 10, and hitting run, as and from there copying code out of books to create little games. It was a real magical era in that time. But right here in 2025, let's kick off by introducing hosting advice that you mentioned a moment ago. What's your mission and what role does that play in today's web infrastructure ecosystem all those years later from those flashing cursors that we talked about a moment ago?
Hostingadvice.com is really trying to be the industry and consumer focused source of hosting news and advice. So there aren't too many sources of like, hey, we what's going on in the hosting industry today. If I'm an industry professional in web hosting, where do I go for my news source? Like there's plenty of news sources out there, but it's hard to filter down into, what do I care about? Right. Thinking about like the TLDR of web hosting. Then there's a lot of people getting into web hosting, right, that don't really know what's going on and trying to simplify that down to like, what are all the terms that I need to know? What are the best products for me? So there's like this beginner, like a huge swath of beginner of people that are business owners that, hey, I need a website. I don't need an enterprise level on premises thing. I need a web presence. I need, to show up in Google. That's really important. That's how people find me. Where do I start? So there's that level all the way up to the enterprise people that are talking about, how do I protect my infrastructure? What's the best way to use, cloud versus on-premises stuff? There's just a wealth of knowledge, and hostingadvice.com has been around for 12 years now. We've been doing it a while. And it's just like we just keep adding more and more information, and we're trying to be the go-to source for the industry and consumers as far as hosting advice goes.
And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today is I wanted to try and demystify a big buzzword at the moment called Vibeware. I was recently at a conference in the US. I think it was Qualtrics. Rick Rubin, the music producer, was on stage. He was talking about Vibeware, vibe coding. But just to set the scene for today's conversation and ensure we don't leave anyone behind, how would you define Vibeware?
It's a definition that I think has changed a lot over the last few months. For me, the original intention of vibe coding is implementing a piece or a full stack of software by not writing any code, by only using some voice or text prompts and letting AI just take over and write the entire thing. I think it really, at first meant the full stack. So you're talking about, everything in whatever piece of software. And then any bugs you run into, you're just sitting back and you're just vibing and you're, giving it more prompts to just get around this problem, either fixing the bug or finding a workaround. You just have your feet up and you're saying, AI, you figure it out. The initial kind of tweet that was around it, that was all he was doing. Move this 50 pixels left, move this 50 pixels right. Oh, this piece of the software is not working. Yeah, let me just like keep prompting it until it works. And I have no idea what it's like. The person was a developer, but they're not looking at the code at all. And I think that was the original idea of vibe coding, from that like full stack day zero. I'm just trying to do a project thing. And the idea of Vibeware is software that enables that kind of interaction with the software. I think the term has grown since then to extending out to pieces of the software and really blurring the lines between AI assistance and this term Vibeware is getting grayer and grayer by the day. I think, for a professional engineer, The term Vibeware is really kind of AI assistance, where, hey, like, I want to write this piece of software, help me write it, AI, get me started, get me going, fill in the blanks, like make this more efficient, do all these things that are encapsulated still within the idea of software development, but aren't necessarily, hey, build me Netflix. Like,
yeah,
we're not there yet.
Not yet, but who knows in the future. And I think one of the cool things about it is we're lowering the bar of creativity and coding and allowing anyone to bring their ideas to life. There's another flip side of that, which maybe we'll talk about later. But I mean, one of the things that attracted me to you, and I saw that you were talking about, is I think you shared a compelling analogy comparing AI-powered Vibeware to home cooking versus dining out, which really caught my attention. But what inspired that comparison, and how do you see that playing out in the developer community?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to come up with analogies sometimes, but I think that one is certainly, there are professional chefs out there, which are the equivalent of, say, professional engineers, where you can go, you can get something professionally done. You might pay a lot for it, right? Because you're paying for their experience and their knowledge, and this thing's going to taste great. But, all of us want to dabble in cooking at home too. And so there's, the various ways of getting into that. And maybe there's there's a service that brings the whole box to you and says, do this step. And like, you're not sure exactly what you're doing when you're cooking at home, but, the box shows up and like, you're following the instructions and boom, you make a meal and you're not exactly sure what happened, but it like lets you get the feeling of, I made this thing, right? Like that's an awesome feeling, is I cooked this. I started with raw ingredients and magic happened and I made it. And it's a great like introduction to cooking and really gives you appreciation of the people that can do it really well. So I think, that's the comparison I was trying to make. What it means for the developer community is a broad question. I haven't met a developer that isn't super excited about AI assistance. I think there's a lot of like external noise about like, what does this mean for software engineering? What does it mean for people's jobs? But in the grand scheme of things, I think the idea of getting more people to be excited about writing code and using like AI tools is an exciting place to be. If my friend that doesn't know anything about software engineering could care less about what I do on a day-to-day basis, is all of a sudden like, man, wouldn't it like, can I just like, I have this idea for, how many people come up to us, or I have an idea for an app, or I have an idea for this thing, or wouldn't it be cool if this or that? Like, and then you show them like, hey, you can do this. Like, you can use Vibeware to make your idea like at least partially come to life and get that feeling of like creation. I think that's an awesome thing. So, what it means for the developer community, I think is like, man, it's really going to expand out the possibilities, and not just the efficiency of engineers and those kind of more worrisome, boring topics.
And with AI tools becoming more accessible each week, are we entering an era where anyone will be able to code, or is that gap between AI generated code and production ready software, is that wider than it seems, or as it's reported, would you say?
It depends on the scale of the code again. So the gap is very wide in going from this kind of day zero idea, this idea of I'm going to make a full stack app and release it to the world using only AI assistance, because you still have to know what questions to ask. Like, even if somehow you're able to make this full stack app that potentially services one user, say that's successful, and you're now dealing with 100 users, 1,000, 10,000, a million. Like, if you don't understand the idea of caching, of invalidation, of content delivery, of all these things that like you probably didn't know you even needed to prompt the AI for, assuming the AI could even do this. We're a long way off, I think, from the full stack, just like vibe coding a whole web app at large scale. The idea that AI can write production ready code, though, we are there. I don't know. There probably aren't too many companies now that aren't using AI written code. I think Microsoft came out and said, like their CEO said, about 30% of their code is written by AI now. Google, I think in the same vein, said about 30%. Y Combinator came out and said like it was a crazy number. It was like 95% of their code for the current, batch of startups. Like 95% of the code is being written by AI. So we are certainly in the phase, and I believe everybody should be using AI generation to improve their efficiency in terms of coding. But you still have to know what questions to ask, and it's on portions of software at a time, not just kicking your feet back and vibing your way through the whole thing.
Yeah. And there's an old saying, isn't there? A little knowledge is dangerous. And I think if you're just creating something out of nothing and you don't know any of the terminology or any of the responsibilities, there's an argument there. And some also argue that AI is simplifying development, while others in the community will say, actually, we're creating new layers of complexity. So over to you. I'd love for you to bust a few myths and misconceptions here. What are the most misunderstood aspects of AI-assisted coding right now, would you say?
I think the most is you still have to know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
And that it's very bad at debugging. So like from the outside, or when you watch other people do it, you see a lot of, there are a lot of successful use cases, but it's hard to catch those micro bugs that can creep into your code if you're really not paying attention. So I think, for me, the most misunderstood is like where to effectively use it. And like most AI tools, the world is still trying to figure that out. Like where is AI good and where is AI bad? Even with ChatGPT, equating it to just like going on there and searching things. Sometimes you want personal experience, like knowing that this is like, if I'm going for, say, a product review or something like that, I want a person's experience with this car that I'm looking at. What do people think about it? I could ask AI what it thinks about this car, but like, that's just not a good use for AI, at least right now. So it's similar in the software engineering world. We're still figuring out like where is AI really useful to improve our efficiency as developers, and where does it make so many mistakes that you end up going back and fixing so many things. So I think there's a lot of confusion around what it's capable of currently.
And I'm curious, from your vantage point, all the conversations that you're having with people around the world, how is AI shifting that classic buy an off-the-shelf product versus build something or build a personalized product decision for companies, especially when they're investing in digital solutions? When they're looking at that, do we buy, do we build? Is AI changing that conversation or making it easier or harder?
Oh, I think, yeah, the idea of building internally is going to, and is already, and is going to continue to grow, because so many solutions we have on the software side are generalized solutions for problems a lot of companies may have, right? Like the idea of software as a service, you have to build in all this stuff to make products that a lot of companies can use, but aren't specific to a use case for one company. And so more and more, as like AI coding, not specifically vibe coding, but as AI capabilities and coding get larger and larger, it's going to be easier and easier to build internal tools that do exactly what your company wants, from the user interface down, and do that at a pace that before just wasn't achievable. Right. If I have a piece of software like, hey, we need something that like takes it, ingests this data from this data source, run some algorithm on it, put some data out, give me an Excel spreadsheet that shows me the data and shows me and provide me 3 actionable items out of this data. That's your recommendation. Before, like, to write that kind of software it would take so long that it might not be worthwhile to a small company, making data-driven decisions at that scale. But now, you could vibe code that out. You could AI that out and be able to like really do a lot of data-driven internal tools that you couldn't before. And so I do think it'll affect the software as a service industry as a whole. And I think there'll be a lot more internal tools built specifically for people's use case.
And you've emphasized, and I think we should really reiterate, the continued need for foundational knowledge in things like debugging, infrastructure, and data structures. So what advice would you give, though, to aspiring developers trying to stay relevant in this new hybrid environment that we're talking about?
Man, I thought about this one a lot. It's something that I think about. How is it going to affect the junior engineer? How is it going to affect the people that are coming up? And I've gone back and forth. At first I was like, oh man, they're in trouble. But now I actually I think we're going to have a new generation of engineers that grow up with, this is just the way of coding, that AI is just a portion of their toolbox. I do think, the foundation of software engineering and engineering in general will stay the same. There's the quote, there's two hard things in software engineering. It's naming things and cache invalidation. I think that'll stay the same, right? Like, you still have to know what is this thing doing, and like, how do I put the pieces together? Whether you memorized what the most efficient sort is or just ask AI to write you the most efficient sort. You still have inputs and outputs. You still have things that are connecting each other. You still have to name things. You still have to cache things. So the foundational knowledge of software engineering, I don't think is going anywhere. But I do think, I would be excited to be a college student or a kid growing up in the world of AI development. Like, yeah, that would have changed my green blinking cursor a lot. I would have definitely enjoyed that. And I think, where at first I was worried about the idea of junior software engineers or how education would go, now I'm more excited. I think the opportunities are just like huge. It's going to be another, there was a period in the maybe early 2000s where just like web development and engineering was moving so fast. It was like we were moving from this like the original web to this like new version of the web that was much more interactive, much more beautiful. And there was excitement around it. I feel like that same thing is coming with the AI revolution.
So if I was to ask you to look into a virtual crystal ball and look further into the future, how do you see a developer role evolving in automation, Vibeware, and AI native tools? As all these things continue to mature and maybe even converge, how do you see those roles evolving?
Yeah, I think, it'll be an important part of people's resumes of what they can accomplish using AI versus what they can accomplish just straight up coding. We've already seen, I think there'll be a downtick in the number of developer jobs that are needed, and then a huge uptick. In my crystal ball, I think the developer role will fragment into, scale pieces, much like it is now with each different piece. Using their own AI tools, they'll be the kind of lower level developers. I mean, closer to the hardware developers, using AI to generate very efficient code. We're talking, at the C level or down. I think it'll be part of everybody's toolbox every day. It'll be integrated into our IDEs. It'll be making suggestions as you go. I think it'll be a huge part of everybody's role. As far as Vibeware goes, I think it'll be the frontier of development for the long term. Like, it'll be people playing with it a lot, and it'll be a while before we're able to just put our feet up and prompt our way to a full piece of software. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, well, a great answer, a perfect moment to end on. But we started the conversation today talking about your origin story, how it began with that simple fleshing green cursor, and then went on to talk about your hugely successful career. But so as we come full circle now, none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. There's usually a person or several people that see something in us, invest a little time to us that maybe you're grateful towards, who helped you get you where you are. So who would that be and why for you?
Yeah, so a little backstory on this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went to school for electrical engineering, got my master's. I'm all hot on myself. I know everything A to Z about electrical engineering now. Look at my pretty piece of paper, and I got put into this working with the government, working with these people that were working on RFICs. And from day one, I got put in there and I realized I know nothing. I know nothing at all. Like everything I learned in school, it is I know how to read the engineering, but I don't know how to do engineering at all. And there was this guy I worked with, his name was Jeremy Pop, and he was just the most brilliant guy I've ever come across. Just seemed to know everything, knew every little detail of the project we're working on from, top to bottom. And one of the things that so this guy is I see him as the gold standard, right? And he is still studying every day, right? He is still learning every day. And I got to see somebody that, you think he knows everything, but then he is still working at it every day, trying to learn more and more and more about the subject matters he loves. And, you could tell he just had a huge passion for this. And the reason he seemed to know a lot is because he's never stopping learning. And that experience for me, oh man, I'm out of school, but I'm not done. I'm not done learning actually. And so in that few years I worked with him, I learned more than my education in college by tenfold. And it really set me up for this idea of you need to constantly be learning. You need to constantly be excited about new topics, new ideas, things outside your scope that may get, funneled into your scope at some point. You really never know. And just things that you're passionate about and you want to learn about, never stop. And from that perspective, I have, one professor that kind of did that to me. And then this guy, Jeremy Pop, who just still, brilliant guy, but really taught me that lesson of if you want to be great at what you do, you better keep learning, because it's an important fact, and you better have a passion for it. The people that are great at basketball are great because they have a passion for it and they love to practice. And so goes everything else. And he reinforced that message for me.
Wow, what an incredible answer. And I really hope that Jeremy gets to hear that message, because I suspect that he's that busy learning that he's blissfully unaware on the impact that he's had on you, your life and your career. And you've made a powerful statement there. You learned more in working with him for 3 years than you ever did in school and college. So that is a huge testament to Jeremy. So Jeremy, a big shout out to you. I hope you realise the impact that you've had here. And for anyone listening wanting to talk more with you or find out about anything we talked about today and all the different websites and the brand, etc., how you might be able to help, where would you like to point everyone listening?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can find us at hostingadvice.com. Feel free to fill out the contact form. That's probably the best way to get in touch with us. We have humans monitoring that, so we'll definitely see your message.
Awesome. And every day on this podcast, I always try and take a topic that a lot of people are talking about and try and demystify it, put it in a language everyone can understand. And I think you've done that beautifully on the topic of Vibeware today. And I would invite anyone listening that's interested in Vibeware or vibe coding, what they thought of the conversation. If there's anything you'd like to add, please contact me directly. But more than anything, Ryan, just a big thank you for starting this conversation today.
Hey, Neil. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's exciting to talk about, exciting times.
I think as Ryan shared today, Vibeware isn't a shortcut, it's a shift. AI might be able to generate impressive chunks of code, but the real impact comes when human developers bring their experience to the table to guide prompts, assess the output, and then stitch everything together into a scalable, secure, and stable application. So we're clearly entering a new era of software creation here. One where automation and human oversight are in constant collaboration. And for developers, especially those just starting out, the message is clear. Embrace these tools, but do not skip the fundamentals. Because debugging, data structure knowledge, and the ability to ask those right questions will matter more not less, in this next wave of innovation. But what do you think? Will Vibeware redefine the development process or reshape how we structure teams and tools? And are we all ready to build smarter with AI, or are we still underestimating the craft that sits behind clean, maintainable code? As always, share your thoughts. Keep questioning how tech is changing the way we build and who gets to build it. Share your opinions and experiences at techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for today, so thank you for listening as always, and I will speak with you all again very soon. Bye for now.